So, we were discussing the module 1, where we studied the business environment domain of PMP exam. And that one module covers the full domain, which is one out of the 3 domains of the PMP exam, which is roughly 8% of the exam questions. But from the significance point of view, business environment was important because now we know the justification of the project. Now we can link a project with the strategy of the organization. And now we understand what is the business need of a project, why projects are created. We understood the concept of business value. We understood the compliance requirements. We understood the governance structures. And we understood the empowerment a project manager has in the type of organizations that we studied. And the organization that we work in and how the project gets influenced by the organization that we work in. So that's roughly the overview, and I hope uh, you remember all these concepts, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. So when we know why we are doing it, it makes a lot of sense to keep doing it. Right?
Yes, yes, right.
The why part we are done. The how part we are starting to learn now, that how we will do it. Okay. Now, how we will manage a project is what we are going to learn, because we already covered why we need to do a project. So that is done. Okay. So
Okay.
now when we start a project, PMI gives you some best practice, some best uh, guidance, you can say, that when you have a project, you start with a proper structure for this project. Let's say we will identify some stakeholders or more stakeholders that we work with. So PMI guides you that you should create your stakeholder register, that you start recording, adding the stakeholders' names, the contact details, the function they work in, the relationship with the project. So we need to build up our stakeholder register so that we know who we need to work with. Make sense?
Yes, makes sense.
And when we know somebody, that okay, now we understood which are the people who will be having a stake in this project. Stake means they may be impacted by the project positively or negatively, right? Anyone who has a positive stake or negative stake is your stakeholder. Make sense?
Mm.
So we'll move to their engagement strategy. So once we know them, we will start to develop some engagement strategy, that how we will going to keep them engaged in the project, because the stakeholder can similarly use their influence to push forward your project objectives. So stakeholders are like uh, opportunities, like they can actually help you achieve your project objectives, right? If your stakeholders are with you, right? Makes sense, right?
Yes.
So the most important part of your PMP exam is also that people management, the people domain, and the people domain comprise of major part of it is the stakeholders, that how you identify them, that how you engage with them, that how you keep them motivated, keep them engaged by their influence, by their assess their influence, and so on. You know. Okay. Now, the second topic that we'll be covering in the this module will be uh, uh, forming, like we need to form a team which will deliver this project. Projects are not done by a single person, right? It's not a single man job. Make sense?
Yeah.
So we need to make a team. So and when we will come to team, the team will have various dynamics. That okay, forming a team is one thing, but just bringing in people in one room is not a team, right? Team means that they need to gel together, to
mm,
work together, to deliver the objectives of the project. That will make them a team, right? So
mm.
we will understand what makes a good team, how team dynamics change from time to time, what happens when we form a team, what happens when they start to show their muscles to each other, and then real management of a project comes in when we deal with people. Make sense?
Yes, makes sense.
Now, with all your objectives that you have identified your stakeholders and you have a real pressing need for the project and you know what team you need to utilize or what team you need to collaborate with to deliver this project. When you will be able to develop a shared understanding between all the team members that what we are going to deliver, you know, because for you, you know why we are doing it. But remember, the team was not there in when you were trying to identify the charter and you understood the sponsor requirements and you just understood the bigger vision, but you need to translate this vision to your team. Make sense?
Yes, makes
Yeah.
sense.
So this means that what you know in your head, you need to also make sure you transfer this to your team. And each one, everyone know the reason why we are doing it.
Mm,
And then we will say, wow, we developed the shared understanding between everyone that what is our goal and what is the product that we are making, when we are making, we are all together to deliver it. So this is some shared understanding about the objective.
mm.
And last but not least, what we will study about is there are various methods of doing the things, right? When it comes to um, a simple task like getting to the second floor of a building, you can take stairs and you can take an elevator, right?
Mm,
So, so what is the approach that we are going to take to deliver this project? It could be an iterative approach, it could be a predictive approach, it could be any agile, incremental, um hybrid approach that we may take to deliver our project, right?
mm.
So these are the topics of discussion for our second module, and I think we have spent a lot time on uh, just giving the introduction. So let's move on one by one. Well, the first topic is the identify and engage with the stakeholders. And now the question is, what are the stakeholders? And the answer is that anyone who has a positive or negative stake in your project is your stakeholder. It could be your end users for whom you are doing the project. It could be the customer, sponsor, any one within your organization which will be impacted by the results of the project, anyone within your community which will benefit the outcome of the project, or any of your business partners which will be beneficiary of the outcome of the project, because project will in the end or during the project someone will get impacted by the results of the project or by the work done for the project. Someone will have an impact. Maybe you are constructing a bridge and someone has their homes, their lands, which will be utilized for which need to make a way for the bridge, right? So they need to give up their lands, their houses. So these are our stakeholders which have a negative stake. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Those people will be impacted badly, adversely by your project objective, right? So they will become your negative stakeholders. Mean they are not negative in the sense as they, they they are the people who will create problems or troubles for you, but they are getting negatively impacted. They are losing some money, they are losing their land, so they might resist. You should expect that there is a resistance coming, and you need to manage that resistance. You need to do some mitigation for that resistance that may come in, right?
Mm.
Uh, So, who are the stakeholders? As I said, anyone who will be benefiting from the project. It can be internal or external to the organization that is delivering the project. It can be within the organizational structure, all the managements or other functional units, which will be the beneficiary, or any employee in the organization that will be the beneficiary. Outside the organization, it could be the business sponsors, suppliers, contractors, uh, government, any community member that you are working in. Now, so when we said that PMI tells us to follow some structure, to remember few things when it comes to stakeholder. So the first thing is a template called stakeholder register. Okay. And we said that stakeholder register will have more details about the stakeholder, and we'll keep on building that register with the detail that will be continuously identified. Like I didn't knew someone that is there in the organization, and now I know him, but I want to know him more. What is his structure? What is his position in the organization? I will identify what is his role in the project, what is his interest in the project, what is his engagement level in the project. So the more I identify about him, I'll keep on adding in the stakeholder register. Now, stakeholder register is the first thing. Then we have a stakeholder engagement plan, which means that for different people, there are different strategies for engagement. Like some people will just need you to pass by and tell them what's happening in the project, right? But for the others, you may have to write a proper project status report, schedule a meeting with them and present them, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Then, uh, then the related to engagement plan is that we also need to develop our communication management. So in communication management plan also, we need to take care of the preference of the people, how they want us to communicate with them, right? Some people again prefer written emails, some people prefer verbal communication, some people prefer formal communication, informal communication. So we need to understand what what are the needs of the stakeholder and how better we can communicate with them. If it is any change that you are you need to formalize it in a project setting, then you may need to raise a formal change request, right? And it could be a written change request. So we need to understand when we need to communicate verbally, when we need to communicate by in writing, when we need to communicate formally, and when we need to communicate informally. Make sense?
Makes sense.
That is more about your communication management. Then we have to understand our stakeholders, right? So I said we will assess them. How we will assess them? There are some tools which can help us assess stakeholders. One of them is the stakeholder engagement assessment matrix, and we'll see that. But overall, it means that it will tell us that this stakeholder seems like a bit of unaware about the project, right? So we will assess that, yeah, this stakeholder is highly involved in the project, and this stakeholder is neutral about the project. This stakeholder is negative stakeholder. Maybe he has, he is anti, I mean, he is a resistant. He has resistant attitude, right? He's not pro project, he's anti project, right? So he's showing resistance toward the project. And then uh, we may we may think about how we can turn this resistance into a support, or maybe neutralize this resistance, right? Some people are resistant, so we just neutralize them so that they should not create the problem. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And then we will have some assessment grades. We will try to understand how we can categorize a stakeholder uh, as someone which we need to give more important, and we need to keep engaged, keep informed, keep in touch, and someone which we need to um, just stay in touch. So
So,
depends
sir,
upon.
is it right to say that stakeholders are those who sponsor a project?
One of them is the sponsor, but not all. Especially, let's say if you are working in a company and the company um, CEO is sponsoring for a new enterprise resource planning system, ERP system. So now this ERP system, the sponsor is your own head of the department, but who will be the beneficiary of this ERP system is your employees working in the organization, right? They will be
Yeah.
using this system. And who will they be serving? The customers of the organization, right? So all of
Mm,
these people who will be the beneficiary of this project will definitely be your stakeholders, right? Including
mm,
the sponsor who is funding it, and including the people that you need the support from to know the requirements of the ERP, because ERP again will be touching the whole organization. It will be touching HR, finance, procurement, and operations, and many other departments. So all of the functional heads of those organizations will become your stakeholders. Make sense?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, I hope you got that. Now,
Yes, sir.
uh, now I need to know who is my stakeholder, and then for this, let me go back to the documents that I already have created, which is the business case, which has the justification of the project. Make sense?
Mm,
And I will try to identify whose idea was this. Was it the research and development department which came up of a new product idea, or was it an engineer? Was it any functional head who pushed forward this initiative? So, who actually initiated this request could be someone who actually prepared the business case and gave the justification for this project, and he will be someone who will be very much behind the project to be getting done. So business case is the first document which will give me the information about who is behind this project. Make sense?
yes, sir. Yes.
And then the benefit management plan is also one of the document that we discussed before, and this is also created much before the project charter is developed. So it is created for the purpose of ensuring that the benefits will be realized, and how the benefits will be realized once this project will be delivered over the period of time, how the product or the service that is initiated as the result of this project will deliver benefits for the organization in a month's time, in a year time, in 5 years time, in 2 years time. We don't know, but that benefit management plan will tell us that by the end of first year we'll be having the results coming in, and these are the expected. This is the expected revenue increase with the introduction of new service or the product, or this is the whatever the benefit that we started with for this project. So these two documents will help in review. So what skill we are using? Nothing. We are not interviewing. We are not. We are just going back, and we are just looking at our documents, and we are seeing business case and benefit management plan. Make sense? So,
Yes,
so,
sir.
so you use the documentation review technique, in which you studied two documents which you already have creation of the project. You can say in pre-initiation stage, because initiation is what you are initiating the project now, and you will develop the project charter and stakeholder register. But one step before the project initiated was the pre-initiation, where you develop the business case and benefit management plan, right?
Mm,
Make sense?
yes, sir.
Yeah. So this was the period. Let's say here the project started, here the project pre-initiation stage where you develop these two documents, business case and benefit management plan. Okay. And then once the project is started, you will create another two documents, stakeholder register and the project charter. Make sense?
Mm.
Yeah. So you need to remember these three templates, and very important from the PMP exam. And also, in fact, when you manage your projects, you need to create these documents. So now, if we know our stakeholders and we identified our stakeholders, some of the stakeholders from business case, as an example, we may discover that this project is being done with the help of a contractor, subcontractor, or other business partners. So that information will be available in the business case. And then you can also look after the RFP, the proposal that was raised. From that documentation review, you can get to know who are your stakeholders. If you know your stakeholders, now the time is to develop the relationship or assess. Before we develop the relationship between with the stakeholders, we need to know them, or we need to assess them that okay, I know Valeri is our stakeholder, and Mr. Valeri has been working in procurement department from past 5 6 years, and he reached the management position. Now we understand that he is our stakeholder, but we don't know that what is in it for Valeri. What is in it, what is in this project for Valeri, like how his life will become easy when we will deliver this project. Make sense?
Mm.
Make a lot of
So we
sense, sir.
need to understand his interest level, and his interest level might be like he is unaware, he is very much leading in the project, so we don't know, he may be unaware, he may be leading. So we need to identify his engagement level. And then it means that how much involved he is and what are the uh, dependencies that we have on Valeri. So what we need from Valeri and what we need Valeri is looking after from us, right? The project team. And how much the stakeholder is having the power in the organization, right? How much influence that the stakeholder can derive from within the organization or outside the organization, so that he can be, he can be rolling up his sleeves, and he or she can be pushing forward the project together with us so that we can get it done faster and quicker and cheaper, right? Make sense?
Makes sense, sir. Makes
The
sense.
more the influential are the stakeholders are, and the more they have involvement in your project, active involvement and leading involvement, with the power comes the influence. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So then they will be impacting our project positively or negatively. Then okay, so well, we identified our stakeholders through documentation review. However, now if I need to go one step ahead, I need to dig deep. I need to ask more questions so that I can come to know what is the position of the stakeholder in the organization, what is the interest level, involvement, engagement, influence. So for this, I need to ask more questions and dig deep, right? So I will prepare some questionnaires, surveys, do some brainstorming to reach to this information, right?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Okay, so that is called stakeholder analysis. Stakeholder analysis is that you identify what is the stake of this stakeholder in the project, like what is at stake, what he can lose or what he can win. That could be the stake, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, simply stated, right? So depending
Yeah.
on what is at stake, they will take an interest, they will take an ownership, they will contribute, and they will be your support for the project. Um, Again, document analysis also will help you to identify if the organizational structure is written, documented somewhere, you could be easily identifying, oh, the top person in the organization is the CEO, and this is Mr. or Mrs. who actually has a lot of interest in this project. So we need to, we need to, we will come to know that more details through the documents document hierarchy, like the organizational hierarchy. Viewing the organizational hierarchy, we will come to know that more detail about the stakeholder, that they actually are the top guys with a lot of power and a lot of influence, because we can see they are top in the hierarchy, right? That means we can use document analysis to assess the stakeholders. Make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Hi Valeri, how are you?
I'm fine, sir. Are you?
Great, great, great. Okay. So now when I know that my stakeholders have got some power and got some influence, so what I can do, I can draw some really cool uh, matrices, or we call it, I can map these stakeholders into the grids. And those grids are like similar kind of grids, like we can say, if the stakeholder has got power and they have got some influence or the interest, I can create this high and low matrix. Okay, so what I can do, on x-axis, I can plot their interest level in the project from 0 to 1 or low to high. Make sense? And
Makes
on
sense.
y-axis, I can plot their power from 0 to 1 or low to high. Make sense?
Makes
So
sense, sir.
let's say a stakeholder who has got a power and a stakeholder who is really interested in your project, what should be the quadrant that stakeholder will be in this, right? They have got the power and they have got the influence, or I mean they have got the interest and they have got the power. Make sense?
Mm. Yeah, makes sense, sir.
Understand?
Understand. Valerie, can you mute there's noise from your background?
Can I remove? Oh,
Yeah, it's okay now.
okay. So all I'm making is the point that it's a 2D diagram. It tells you that you can map your stakeholder either here or here or here. If you map a person A over here and a person B over here and a person C over here and person D over here, okay? It means that a person A has got high interest in your project and highly powerful. Make sense?
Yes, sir, it makes sense.
And person D, he has got low interest in your project, and he has got very low power as well, right?
Mm.
So it means that a person A will manage this person very closely. We should be, right?
Yeah.
We should be managing this type of person very closely, keep them involved in all the meetings that we do, or at least update them with the progress, because they are really interested in the end result of your project and they are really powerful in the organization. So we should always be in touch with them. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
But the person D, where we need to keep, I mean, we don't need to spend much time on this type of stakeholder because they have no power and no interest. So we keep them, we just monitor them, right? Maybe some time of the year or the month or the day, they get interested and then we can get them involved, right? So we monitor these people that have very little power and little interest. Make sense?
Mm.
Yeah. Now, other people like who are really, really, really interested and excited about your project and result, but they are very low in power. So what you will do, you also keep them informed. Fine. You guys are really interested, but you can't draw some influence because you don't have the power for us, which can actually really help us to achieve project in less time, in less the money. So we don't want to actually, basically, we don't need your services, but we appreciate your interest, right?
You're right.
Yeah. Now, coming to the stakeholders who have no interest in your project or maybe less interest in your project, but they are really powerful, you keep them satisfied. They should not be pissed off with all what you do. So we always keep them satisfied because look, they don't have an interest. That it doesn't mean that they they can't veto you, right? They can show their powers because they have got the powers on the other side, right? So we need to actually manage the relationship between them so that they are satisfied with whatever we are doing. Now, this matrix can be created in many ways. One of the way is one which we have seen here. But if you construct this matrix with the power instead of power interest, because it is power interest now, right? You can construct it with the power influence even. But these strategies remain same. Even if you change this interest with the influence, the strategy will remain same, that the stakeholder A you will manage closely, who has got more influence and more power. Okay. So whether you replace it with the influence or whether you replace it with the interest, the strategy will remain same for these type of stakeholders. Third one is the impact influence also. So if you replace the power with the impact and you replace the interest with the influence, nothing changes. The strategy remains same, that the people who have got more, the people who have got less influence, less impact, what you will do? You will monitor them. Make sense? Okay, so what we learned today is the two-dimensional matrix, such as power interest grid. We call it a grid, 2D grid, two-dimensional matrix. We are mapping the stakeholders based on their power and interest into the quadrants of a matrix. And then we are deciding the strategies how we can proceed and engage with these stakeholders, right?
Right.
Okay. So when you have a third factor along with your power and interest in equation, okay? When you have power and interest in two dimensions, but there is a third dimension where you also want to measure the attitude of the stakeholder. How you will distinguish this attitude from the behavior of the stakeholder, that is he aware, neutral, resistant, supportive, leading. What is the attitude? You know? So if you have a third dimension, along with the power, along with the interest, you want to measure the stakeholders also on the level of interest they have in the project. I mean, the level of interest we know, the power we know, but the attitude towards the project, neutral, resistant, supportive. You know, are you our people or their people? So that is also important. So we call it 3D. This is third dimension, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we learned about two things, 2D model and 3D model. 2D, we have grids like power interest, power influence, impact influence, and 3D, we also include one other factor, which is called attitude. All good? So far, so good?
Good.
Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, so I want to show you the stakeholder register, and it's an important initiation document that you will be creating. That the more you identify the details about the stakeholder, you will be adding here the name of the stakeholder, title, any other distinction, whether it is an internal or external stakeholder, what is the role in the project, what are the requirements from the project. Like you said that sponsor, is it a stakeholder? Yes, sponsor is a stakeholder, right? Now, if it is
Mm.
a sponsoring organization, is a bank or a government or anyone in the organization, what will be their requirement? The requirement will be that you, Mr. Project Manager, and your team should deliver the project on time, on budget, and with the full scope what we gave you, right? This is their requirement, right? On time. This is where the expectation that you should successfully complete it within the constraints of the project. Make sense?
Makes sense.
So that is your sponsor, and it could be your CEO. And the expectation is very clear that you should deliver the project timely. So you are accountable for the delivering of the project timely basis. And so on. There could be many other stakeholders as well, and there could have their conflicting requirements. Sometimes these requirements could be conflicting requirements. This person wants something, this person wants another thing. Make sense? These requirements could be conflicting with each other, right?
Mm.
So now it will be very tough for you how you manage these stakeholders. One is going right, one is going left, right? One want this, one want that. Both requirements are conflicting with each other. You know the challenges for the project manager? These kind of challenges. It's not straightforward. It's this line that he is passing. Okay, so you got to know the structure of the stakeholder register, right? Hello. What happened? Are you there?
I went off.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You can still see my screen?
Yes, I can see.
Okay. You understood the structure of the stakeholder register?
Yes.
You know the significance, importance of the stakeholder register?
Yes.
Okay. You know how we can assess our stakeholders? Hmm? Power, interest, influence, attitude, impact. These are the things which we need to know to assess the stakeholders, right?
Yes, right.
So it will show us their engagement levels as well. Now, when we talk about stakeholders, they can have influence within the organization. So different level, different influence. A stakeholder working at top organization level, senior management uh, can have upward influence, right? They can have upward influence.
Mm.
Team member who is technical, who has some special, who is subject matter expert, he has some special skills. He could be having influence on the downward people, the people who work on the activities. Make sense?
Mm.
Now, a stakeholder might have um, the state. So the thing is, the project is getting influence with the presence of a stakeholder in upward direction from outside, from inside, right? So,
Mm.
so the management expectation could be some financials and the business objectives of the project, right? Um, the clients, the people who we work with, we utilize the partners, the stakeholders like external stakeholders, the end users. Uh, this is an outward influence that we may have. uh, from the project or own the project in both directions, right? The people influencing the project positively or negatively, and the project outcomes helping them positively or negatively, right? So now,
Right.
some of the influence are sideways because you are doing a project in the organization, and then your colleague, another project manager, is also doing a project in the same organization, right? So you could have some give and takes with those project managers, right? So you could also influence their project. Your project work may influence their project work because both projects are done within the same organization, right? We work in the same system. You remember the system thinking? So we have some give and takes, handshakes happening, some resources working here and there. We may have some metrics or type of organization where we need to negotiate all the time some resources from the other project managers or the other functional managers, right? It could be. So we can influence some projects in a sidewards, right?
Mm.
So these are the directions of the influence that we may see. Now, one of the other model that specially is used to get to know our stakeholders more, like we want to understand our stakeholders in a bit more detail, is the salience model. So salience model actually talks about trying to identify the power of the stakeholder, which we already have seen in the 2D model, right? We know the power and the interest, we already know, right?
Mm.
Now, legitimacy is more of the involvement that the project, the stakeholder has. So it is more of a interest level, right? So the power means power, influence. I mean, power mean power, and legitimacy mean the involvement or the interest level. Now, urgency is another categorization where where they need something, the stakeholder needs something now, you know. So it's the expectation is so high that they want something tomorrow morning, right? So the
Mm.
urgency could be one more factor that can come in within the salience model, along with the power and the legitimacy of the stakeholder. So if we categorize these stakeholders into legitimate, urgent, and powerful, there will be some area which is an overlap area, which will be really, really important for us. And if a stakeholder A lies here or stakeholder B lies here, then it will be super important stakeholder. Make sense? Because they
Mm.
have got urgency, they have got legitimacy, and they have got the power. They have every bit of it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it is in this circle, in this circle, in this circle, right? So this stakeholder has all it got, right? It has urgency, legitimacy, and the power. So salience model is really important model to understand. Okay, some of the stakeholder lies only here, which means they don't have the legitimacy. They have got the power, they have got the urgency, but they don't have legitimacy. Maybe some stakeholder lie here, which has the legitimacy and power, but no urgency, right?
Mm.
C doesn't have urgency, B doesn't have legitimacy, and same is the case of this stakeholder, which does not have power, but they have legitimacy and urgency. So salience model, and then there could be some stakeholder which only has urgency, right? And some stakeholder which only has legitimacy, and some
Message.
stakeholder which only
Power.
has power. Make sense?
Mm.
So uh, what should be your order of importance for these stakeholders? I would say you should do like this. Your more important stakeholder should be definitive stakeholder, which means that A. So A is your, if you need to spend your attention So A should be the one who should be more getting more attention, right?
Right.
Second would be B, D, and C. Make sense? And then it doesn't matter. E, F, and G, right? So if your scale of attention, we need to say is this, then we need to spend more time. So more attention should be with this guy, A, and then B, and then C, right?
Mm.
So you got to know the salience model as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let's move. I wanted it to be quick, but I can't be more quick because I want to explain as well, right?
Yes, right. You need to explain.
Yeah. But you are getting the
Right.
point, right?
Yeah.
So now stakeholders might have some perceptions, or those perceptions also need to be managed because you being aggressive and assertive might be perceived. I mean, that could be our perception about you, right?
Mm.
So as they have perception about the project will fail because the project manager is very naive, right? He's not assertive. He's not putting up more uh, interest or um, assertion. So we think that the project will fail. So those perceptions need to be managed as well. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah. So it is really important that you create that energy, synergy, and environment of um, positivity. You build that trust level within the stakeholders that rest assured the project is in safe hands, right?
Mm.
Cool. Okay. So now I need to understand what my stakeholder perceptions are. What can I do? I can interview people. Often we take feedback from the stakeholders that what do you think? What do you think with the products that we are making or the demos that we are giving? Because we will be delivering something every now and then, right? In Agile, what we do, we deliver quite often, right?
Yes.
So we'll capture the feedback, and feedback is an important element that actually gives us some areas of improvement, right?
Right.
Really important. So now to capture the stakeholder feedback, it is really important that we we devise a mechanism to capture the feedback. It could be written, oral, verbal. So we need to be attentive. We need to use our emotional intelligence and our specifically our active listening ability, right?
Mm.
So you need to hear them out, what they wanna tell you. So that is really important. But if you need to hear them out, you need to give them ears that I am listening, right?
Mm.
Yeah. So those are the tools that you can utilize to capture the stakeholder feedback, whether you just give them on a scale of 1 to 5, how did you find this person? Uh, or how did you find this product? Attentive, how did you find this product meeting your requirements, right? So
Mm.
that's how the stakeholders will give you the feedback that it meets, it exceeds, it's hardly meets our requirements. So they can rate your products and the services what you are delivering, right?
Right.
Now, what else? Okay, so remember, we we talked about two plans as well when we started this today's lecture, and specifically we started the stakeholder identification and engagement, that we need to prepare our stakeholder engagement plan and we need to prepare our communication management plan. So stakeholder engagement plan will be having number of strategies that we can adopt to deal with difficult kind of stakeholders, right? We may not have a similar style across the whole organization, right? We may have some really hard rocks type of stakeholders, right?
Mm.
So we may have people which are really approachable, which are not at all approachable. So what should be our strategy for engaging, right? People like who are okay that if we smoke with them or chill with them and talk with them, it's fine. But people who are reserved, who we need to take an appointment, they could be really hard to be approached, right?
Right.
So why? Did you ask why?
No, I say right.
But the why was actually good question. So why would be that? Yeah, people have bureau, different environment, different style of communication, right? Some people are really bureaucratic and they actually want you to take an appointment and come to them, right? It's not always casual.
Yes, yes, that for sure.
So what we need to understand as well is the communication management plan, and the communication requirements is the first step. So communication requirement mean that how this person want me to communicate. Shall I pass by him and just say what I need quickly, or just I need to book a meeting in his or her free time, or I just send them an email and they will respond. So what is the best way to communicate with them, right?
Mm. And
So
also,
that's,
how you will know the best way to communicate in them in the first place?
well, you will try. You will hit and try. You will try communicating. The person is reserved. You will get to know that they really are people who I need to actually follow the protocols, the process, right? So you
Mm.
will try some informal way, didn't work. You will try formal way, it will work. You will try written communication, it didn't work. You tried verbal communication, it worked. So it's always hit and trial, right?
Mm.
But again, sometimes you also, as I said, you can do a survey that how best to communicate with you on from the below methods. So when you start the project, when you assess the stakeholders, that is the time when you ask them the questions, right? When you meet them, sir, what is the best way to communicate in the future? We may be communicating all the way throughout this project. So please let us know the best way to communicate with you, right?
Mm.
Direct question would be the best way, right?
Yes.
So when we deal with people, we talk with them verbally, we talk with them face to face, we meet them, we talk with them virtually, sometimes on the Zoom call, sometimes on the Microsoft Team call, sometimes we pick up the phone and call. So no matter which medium we communicate, which method we use, which technology we use, what is being said, is it being understood, is the objective of the communication, right?
Mm.
So how we can make sure that the communication happens? So sometimes we need an information and it is always available on a SharePoint, right? On a share folder. So if some people want an information, they can always go and pull the information, right? So let's say
Mm.
the project status report is already available for the last week, let's say, in a shared drive. So if some executive want to know the project status, they can pull it. Make sense?
Mm.
Some communications are push communications, which happen from the project manager. I think the not I think, but actually the project manager is doing most of the time he's communicating. And some communications they do periodically, like weekly status report is a weekly report, which they will be pushing by email and sending to the majority of the stakeholders which need to be communicated. Now, the communication, it is very important that you not communicate with majority of the stakeholders. You will communicate the right information with the right audience at the right time in the right format. This is important, right? This is really important that you should not be communicating some information which is not relevant with the other party, right? So always remember what is in it for this person who I am communicating with. So do not broadcast always the communication. Be very selective that what you need to communicate is going to the right audience. Now, when we communicate, there are certain challenges like the noise that is coming in between when we are communicating together is one of the communication blocker. It could block, like I am saying something, but you are not able to hear, right? Sometimes. So that is the disconnection. That means that is a communication blocker. What other communication blockers are that if you are not in a mood of listening, so you will say oh, blah, 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 and then this is a communication blocker. Makes sense? Yeah. Sometimes this happens, right? If someone is giving us a feedback, we say blah, 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 blah.
Yes,
So
yes, that's true.
that is also not healthy because it will block the communication. So sometimes it actually is the language barrier that we know the fact that we want to hear, but the accent from the other party sounds so strange that it is first time or it's a new accent for us to comprehend the information, right? Yeah, it could be. It could be one of the factor could be the language and the accent of the language, which actually makes it difficult to understand. And other times we need to also be considering that what is being communicated, is it allowed? Because there are certain laws and regulations as well when we communicate data. Communication is what? Communication of project information, which is actually a data. And if the data is traveling across the medium, it may travel in the other part of the in other part of the world, right? So which is which is being regulated, right? We cannot communicate project happening in our organization to our competitor, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So there are certain consideration when we communicate, and there are certain challenges because there could be some taboo words which are okay in one part of the world, and there could be some taboo words which are not okay in the other part of the world, right? I mean, there are some words which are taboo in one part of the world, but very much okay in the other part of the world. Let's put it in this way, right? So we should be very considerate about that. So now the basic physics of the communication is that when I communicate, I am using a communication medium and I'm encoding my thoughts using a language into words. So that language is an encoding language, which is, let's say, English. So I'm encoding my thoughts in English. But let's say I transmitted this communication through a medium, which could be a wireless medium or a wired medium or whatever medium. But on the other side, the decoding language should be English, but it is not English, it is Arabic. So the decoder will not be able to decode me, right? Make sense?
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So now the decoding should be based on the same encoding language that I used. Ow. So if the other person is also using the same language of decode the words back to the thoughts. So now what's happening is they are decoding the words into thoughts. So if they understand me, they will say yes, acknowledge. So again, they will encode in the same language and send the message feedback, and then I will decode the message feedback. So this is how the communication happens electronically or physically, but it is impacted by various communication barriers, which could be the the people who are communicating. Let's say at one side, generation alpha generation is communicating. Let's say you are talking with your son, which is born after 2014, and you are talking, and you are millennial like me. So the generational gap could create some kind of emotional disconnect, right?
Yes.
Same goes with the professional level, national level, gender bias. So there are many biases which we should assume that could be there in the communications that are happening in the projects in throughout the project, right?
Right, sir.
Because of which communication can go wrong. You said something, some other person took it negatively. What will you do? Na-na. Okay. So now when I was talking about stakeholder engagement strategy, I was talking about their engagement level. And then if you feel the stakeholder is involved, it could be one of the following: that the stakeholder is either resistant to the project, or neutral to the project, or supportive to the project, or leading to the project. And then I can map these attitudes in the matrix. So I can say stakeholder C is resistant, stakeholder D is neutral, stakeholder no, not like this. It could be that stakeholder 1 is actually right now currently uh, currently leading the project. Okay, this is the current level of stakeholder 1. However, what we wanted or desired level of the stakeholder 1 was that we need at least them to be supportive. Do we need to do any more extra effort in this on this stakeholder 1? Doesn't make sense, right? All we wanted it to be supportive, and then it is not only supportive, it is leading in the project. So all done. This stakeholder, we don't need to invest any time, any energy, right? They're already leading. Now let's say the stakeholder 2, this stakeholder currently is supportive. Now what we actually want, our desired level, is that the stakeholder 2 should be leading in our project. Make sense? So what does this type of matrix called? SEAM matrix, stakeholder engagement assessment matrix. So now what we are assessing, where they are right now currently, and what is the desired level. Like the stakeholder C is neutral, but we don't want neutral people in our project. We want them to be supportive. Same goes with the stakeholder 4. We don't want them to be neutral. We want them to be supportive. Now, stakeholder 5 is actually resistant. So what our first strategy should be, that they should be converted to neutral, at least, if not supportive, right? Now, this is the assessment, and then we will shortlist the people we need to work. So now when we finish mapping the stakeholders, that what is their current level and what is their desired level, then we know where are the areas where we need to work on, and where are the areas we don't need to actually invest much of the time. So we identified few stakeholders where we really need to work on our stakeholder 5 actually, which is resistant to the project, which is not a healthy thing. We need to make them neutral, right?
Right.
All good? Happy?
Good.
Understood?
Very,
Understood.
very.
Ah, Valeri, you are
Oh.
still here?
Yes, sir. I'm always here.
Oh, wow. I sometimes miss you, but you lose because of the disconnection. I lost you for a while, I think.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay.
Kuma is here.
Who?
Kuma
Kamar?
is here.
Kamar will come
Mm.
when I will be super tired. The same moment he will land in the class.
No, I am here listening. Actually, I joined late only. I was not expecting that the link will come immediately, but I went out for prayer. I came back after 1 hour actually. But once I came back, I saw the message like they already.
I wanted to take 2-3 minutes break, and then I think we covered a lot, right, Abil?
Yes, sir. We cover a lot.
Today we are in the super forward mood, and then I think we already covered our first module, which was very important module from exam point of view. Let's practice some questions. It was identify and engage with our stakeholders, where we first studied 2D matrix and then we studied 3D matrix, how we can so basically, just to give you guys some introduction or maybe just recap. So what we studied today, we got to know what is a stakeholder register. Okay. What is the stakeholder register? To start with, we got to know what are the stakeholders. So we said that stakeholders are the people which have either positive or negative stake in the project. Khalas. Either they will be positively impacted or negatively impacted by the objectives of the project or the work of the project. Now they will cry or they will be happy when the project will be done or when the project will be already completed. Now, then we capture all the details of these stakeholders. What is their name, their interest level in the project, what is their current engagement, desired engagement, whatever. We capture what is the hierarchy of this stakeholder, like what is the power, what is in the organizational structure, where he stand, what is the interest level in the project, what are the expectation of this stakeholder, everything in the stakeholder register. So what is their name, their position, their power, their interest, their expectation, everything is there in the stakeholder register. Okay. Now, what did I do to get to know all these details? I did stakeholder analysis actually. No one told me. I actually analyzed the stakeholders analysis. This was the technique which gave me all these details like name, position, power, interest, because I analyzed these stakeholders. Now, how I got to know my stakeholders, I did another step, which was identify stakeholders. So I identified the stakeholders, but how I identified the stakeholders? How I identified the stakeholders, I used one of the technique which is called as document analysis. So how I identified my stakeholders, I used one of the technique called document analysis, and document analysis helped me to know my stakeholders. But how? What kind of documents I consulted to know my stakeholders? I consulted business case. At first, in my previous module, in our previous module 1, we were trying to identify why we are doing a project. Why? So we understood why we are doing the project. What is the need of the project? Now, in this module, we are trying to know how we should do the project. Like how part is what we are studying. Now, the business case actually has some history of the project and the need of the project, and who was the first person who dreamed about this project. He would be the sponsor of the project, or at least he would be the stakeholder of the project, and then the business case actually will give us a clue who is involved in this project, whose idea is this, who brought this nonsense. So then what other document that I may consider is the benefits management plan. Benefits management plan is another document which is I can also consider while I need to analyze or identify my stakeholders. Now, why I said that I can also okay, so this is I wanted to know my stakeholders and I wanted to know more about my stakeholders. So I wanted to know my stakeholders. I said that I will read some documents because right now the project has just started and all I have is the written documents. But let's say if I have already identified them, then I can use various other techniques and I can interview my stakeholders. I can prepare some questionnaires to know them more, to know about them more. I need to prepare some questions as well. What are their needs? And then I will get to know that these stakeholders are neutral, resistant, interested, powerful, influential. So that assessment will give me some details which I will put in my stakeholder. Now, when I am assessing my stakeholders, I need to, human mind works in, boxes. We put people in the boxes. So the best technique that I can put my stakeholders and plan my strategy to engage with them was that let me put them in certain boxes. Okay. On a scale of, let's say, high to low, power and interest or influence or impact, whatever. I want to know who is the king that who is the stakeholder which fall in this box? Who is the stakeholder which fall in this box? Who is the stakeholder which falls in this box? Who is the stakeholder which falls in this? So the stakeholders which have got a lot of power as well as interest is the stakeholder A. They have power and they have interest. So power and interest or power and influence, whatever, if they have got both, I will manage them closely. I will manage them closely. But a person who doesn't have a power and he doesn't have the interest in the project, I will monitor them. Okay, maybe tomorrow some good day come and this stakeholder may not become some powerful stakeholder in the organization because he got promoted or somehow. So I don't need to ignore this stakeholder. He may someday become very active and interested in my project. So I need to involve them that time. So that I need to monitor this stakeholder by the time he becomes interested, or otherwise I don't need to spend much time on this stakeholder. But this stakeholder who has, let's say, interest level as well as influence level, let's say, but no power, it doesn't harm me to keep them informed because they have shown a lot of interest in my project, so I will keep them informed. Okay. Okay. Now what about B? B is powerful guy. Now he doesn't have an interest in my project. But the problem is I can't afford to keep them unsatisfied. So I always need to keep them satisfied. Keep them satisfied. Paji, khush ho. So we need to keep them satisfied so that they should not get pissed off any point in time because of the project work. Oh, what you guys are doing, I am getting annoyed and disturbed. When on the other hand, the project is on the last days of completion. Now this influential stakeholder doesn't have any interest, but he has influence, he can stop our work, so will be really impacted. So what we need to do? Pari para paji. So we'll say, no problem, boss, will not disturb you. Okay. So now you got the idea about 2D analysis of your stakeholder. But what is the 3D analysis of your stakeholder is the is the salience model, which we say, let's say there is power and interest on one axis. Let's say x-axis is your interest and the y-axis is your power. But we have a z-axis which says that it's your attitude. It's your attitude. So now your attitude is positive, neutral, resistant. I don't know, but I need to assess you. So if we have a 3D model for our stakeholders, in which we also try to see this stakeholder is resistant, this stakeholder is pro-project, supportive for the project, supportive or leading in the project, or this stakeholder is resistant in the project, like a negative stakeholder. So what is your attitude towards the project, or you are Mr. Neutral? I don't know. So I didn't need to know, along with your power and interest, I need to know what kind of stakeholder you are, what is your attitude towards the project. So that means our 3D model, which is called Salience Model, or our 3D model to assess and categorize stakeholders. So guys, we have one thing left, which is C matrix, and C matrix is the same which we were talking when you guys joined in, and that is where we assess your current involvement in the project, and then we plan a strategy for your desired level in the project. Let's say you are currently resistant to the project, but we want to neutralize you. We want to neutralize you. Then we will be having C matrix. Khalas, I think that's the summary of this lecture, but I will come back after 5-minute break and will practice the questions from this module. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Makes sense.
Yes, Valeri, question?
No, no, it makes sense, sir. No question, sir.
No question. Anji, Tamar.
That's fine. We will do the practice, inshallah, once you will be
Okay,
back.
see you then in 10 minutes, guys.
Okay.
Okay.
The link remains here. I just mute myself.
All right.